what I like to do now, probably more earlier this year, is I like to tell stories and also like to hear stories. And I think that's really what we're here to do today, is to be able to share some content with you that we hope that will motivate you and will also keep you inspired to embrace some of the change that's coming and also look forward to it with more positivity. We will start right now with the customer panel. Our senior solutions specialist, John Wesley, is going to be moderating. And John, I'd like to hand it to you and we'll get going here with the content.
Thanks, Dan. And thank you everybody for joining. I'm really excited and honored from the LiveTiles family to be joined by Becca and Bradley. So without further ado, Becca, would you mind giving the group an intro, and then we'll move on to Bradley?
Sure, yeah, thanks, John. So I've worked at Cognex for about 3 years, and I'm a senior corporate communications specialist there. So my main focus is, internal communications we have about over 2,000 employees worldwide. So this has obviously been a challenging time for us to figure out how to navigate through the new normal. So I think we're learning something new every day. But that's pretty much it.
Great. Thanks for being here, Becca. Bradley, over to you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. So Bradley Pennypacker, I've been working at FOX Rehabilitation for about 6 years now, in the greater healthcare community for 10+ years. And I focus a lot right now on, creating creative solutions for digital workforce problems that we're facing right now in the face of the pandemic. And obviously, moving forward, these are challenges that we're going to continue to face. So just looking forward to tackling those challenges as they come.
Perfect. Thanks. And again, thank you, Becca. Thank you, Bradley. Before we jump in, really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. So yeah, we'll jump right in. We're gonna walk through a handful of topics, all focused around kind of reimagining the workplace, right? And what has kind of become, like you said, Bradley, the new normal, right? It's become cliche in just a few months' time, but it really is kind of looking forward to the future. What will become the new normal? But before we can look forward, we have to take a little bit of a retrospective view, and what have we learned over these last 6 months? So Becca, first question to you is, in these last 6 months, in your role, in your industry, what's really jumped out from a lessons learned perspective?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is that we've learned, there's no such thing as too much communication, which we struggle with all the time internally. Are we sending too many emails out? This was even before the pandemic. We don't want to inundate our employees with too much information. So I think taking a step back, when this all started, we had to figure out what was a happy medium, keeping our customers updated externally, but also our employees internally. So that was something we learned. They actually want as much communication as possible. So, we were sending a couple emails a week, letting them know about the impact of COVID on our workforce, and also, externally, what does that mean for us shipping our products? So I think we learned, more communication, the better, which is something we try to keep in mind. And I would say the other thing we've learned is, it's important to ask for input from employees. That's something that we think, in order to navigate during this, we have to find out how they're feeling. What are they expecting from us? What support do they need? So that's something we've learned in the past 6 months. We kind of have to do a pulse check with them, see how they're feeling, what they want to see more of and less of.
Yeah, and it's kind of an interesting dynamic, right? Because you go from a situation where maybe there were too many emails or too few, but people were picking up their information through the grapevine, the water cooler, the colleague's desk, that suddenly that branch of communication was gone. So yeah, completely understand and respect that. How about you, Bradley? What did you guys take away at Fox from kind of the lessons learned over these last 6 months?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, one of the things that I and Fox took away was just how ill-prepared the healthcare community was as a whole to adapt swiftly and quickly, to adjust and adapt to this new environment, right? And a simple example here is when I worked at a smaller hospital in northern PA, I did a lot of work with the emergency management disaster preparedness department, and we do a lot of localized scenario-based training, right? But it's localized, it's not global. So one of the biggest challenges that we're facing right now is easy access to information. So it's a technology shift, right? We need to do better integrated sharing of data and better data management so that each institution within the healthcare community has access to that information to quickly make action of. And that's the biggest thing, right? Is just the ability to adapt quickly. And as Becca mentioned, to communicate those changes out to the healthcare community.
Yeah, and kind of a good segue into some of those lessons learned, right? When you start talking about kind of those employee experiences, let's call them that, right? The localized, maybe situational training that an employee may rely on to, further themselves, and maybe in context of technology or not technical base, what are the biggest challenges you encountered over the last 6 months? What were some of the bigger hurdles for you, Bradley? Sorry.
Yeah, so from an employee experience standpoint, it's really just adjusting to more employees have to go through the leaves process, right? And we need to figure that out from a technology standpoint to optimize it so that HR isn't overburdened with leaves requests. We're supporting our clinicians in the field to make sure they feel supported, have the options available and ready for them, especially as regulations have loosened and that dynamic state by state changes as well, right? So Fox treats in over 20 different states. Each state is different with the leaves process, especially as it relates to COVID. So adapting that way, and also the emotional support, right? This is a scary time for everyone, and clinicians are putting their lives on the line every day. So we need to be able to support them emotionally, make sure they have the options available from a healthcare standpoint, making sure they feel supported from the top down. And other things just like home life dynamics, right? We're all experiencing some type of change where kids are home, and we need to figure out how to be as productive as possible while getting kids through school and stuff like that. So from a technological standpoint, we've really been focusing on ways to optimize that so people can stay productive, but have more of a flex schedule and feel supported that way.
How about from the Cognex perspective, Becca? Any significant challenges that you guys had to overcome?
Yeah, so actually where we kind of don't believe in work from home, prior to this whole thing, we put a lot of emphasis on in-person collaboration, face-to-face meetings. So the whole thing of this was a real shock to, our company and our employee experience. What does virtually working from home mean? What does that look like to us? What technology do we need to make sure we have in place so that our employees are productive? So that was a huge shift for us, and also not from only a business perspective, but culturally. Kind of like you said, you expect to see your teammates in the office, run ideas by each other, pop by their desk. So that was a huge shift for us to go remote and virtual. So we relied on Microsoft Teams a lot for that. We would usually do in-person product launches, and we ended up having to do one of our most massive product launches ever, the D900, virtually over Microsoft Teams. And it was actually very successful, thankfully, but that was something that was new to us, and we had to adapt to that, something totally unexpected. And also the culture around the offices globally, we would have maybe like monthly events, I would say. Everyone would attend. It was kind of a nice gathering socially to get connections with some of your teammates, and that obviously changed too. We had to take a step back and think, how can we keep the culture alive during a virtual time? That was something that was a big worry for us. So we ended up doing virtual events, virtual trivia, virtual cocktail classes, and they were a big hit, but that took a lot of legwork to figure out how can we shift from in-person to virtually from everything across the board for Cognex.
Right. Yeah, I'm actually based in the mid-Michigan area, so I completely understand and can empathize with that. I've had a lot of friends, that work for manufacturing companies, obviously being right here in the backyard of the automotive industry. And those organizations learning how to go remote, a lot of heartburn, right? A lot of the gap between we're always in the office, it's an 8 to 5, we sit there, we have meetings, we talk to each other, and then you add in the dynamic of the plant personnel, right? The people that actually have to go into the facilities and do the work or support the facilities or provide the information. And that's where we at LiveTiles with some of our solutions, we saw an opportunity to bridge the gap, reaching out to those first line workers. Would love to hear, Becca, how did you guys address that, right? That personalized communication that needs to get out to your front line, that may no longer have that face-to-face interaction. How did Cognex evolve to kind of take advantage of some technology that was out there?
Yeah, so we actually relied heavily on LiveTiles for our intranet, to showcase that our culture was still thriving, even if it was remotely and virtual. Every day we would post a picture on the homepage letting the entire company know how people are still staying connected virtually. And then the other thing is our frontline workers, like you said, it's our distribution centers. So we have employees in all over the world, Natick, Cork, Mexico, and our DCs. They didn't have the luxury of getting to work from home. That wasn't even an option for them because they physically have to be in there in our warehouses. So that was something we needed to think about too. How do we encourage them to stay positive during this time while the rest of the company is focused on working from home? How do we keep them safe? How do we let them know that, we're thinking of them? So there was a couple different things we did for the DC workers, the frontline workers. We would communicate with them weekly and bring in espresso carts, food trucks, just to keep their spirits up, keep them optimistic. And they were so grateful for that.
Bradley, kind of in the same vein, what did Fox do to kind of evolve and make sure they were strategically mobilizing information and making sure their employees were being reached?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, the main objective for us was to use LiveTiles to communicate out updates as it relates to COVID-19, right? That was the biggest challenge for us, is to make sure we had consistent and effective communication across the board by using a combination of intranet sites, specifically for COVID, so that they knew clinical practice guidelines, the updated safety guidelines, emotional support areas that they could reference. So that was a big one. Also creating success stories. Culture is a big part of Fox, and we couldn't lose focus of that. So making sure we were able to publish our success stories on the intranet and pushing those out through email to link them back to the intranet, which is a new way to communicate for us. We've just started going through the Office 365 transformation and building out our intranet. It's a little less than 6 months new at this point. So that's been a huge transformation for us to be able to communicate effectively to our clinicians in the field and make sure they're getting everything they need to in a really easy way, right? We don't want to overcomplicate their lives, especially during this time. So we're actually working through that exercise right now at a higher level to figure out what is the right way to communicate to a broad audience to make sure you don't lose their focus and to make sure the important messages get through and the ones that aren't as important still get read, but making it succinct, if that makes sense.
No, it absolutely does, right? And I appreciate you explaining how LiveTiles helped the situation. We really pride ourselves on kind of changing the way that the employees interact with technology and technology interacts with the employees to make sure that people stay motivated, they stay connected, they stay able to do their best work, basically. And so I'm going to flip it now for a minute, Bradley. Is we've kind of talked about from an organization going out to the employees. Obviously that's important, but at the same time you have to be able to produce and measure tangible results. So going up the chain. So maybe if you wouldn't mind sharing, how was kind of the ROI of the investment around kind of reimagining the workplace? How was that captured, analyzed, kind of run up the chain to leadership, if you will?
Yeah, I would say in a very generalized way, right? Fox was already set up uniquely to be more of a decentralized practice. So we already had clinicians working independently, going into patients' homes and treating. So from that standpoint, we were already kind of ahead of the curve. But we used to have team meetings that would meet locally within each region. And the biggest transformation there from an ROI perspective, it's a no-brainer that we were able to swiftly transition those on-site teams meetings to a virtual team meeting successfully, right? And make sure they had all that background information shared in the intranet as well, so they always have that for reference post a meeting, so they can continue to reference that material. Another more specific example of ROI as it relates to technology transformation during this period and process improvement is we have exposure forms submitted daily from our clinicians, and it was a huge strain and burden on our HR team. So one of the things we did was use Power Automate to create a better flow so that once those forms were submitted, an auto email was generated based on whether a clinician had to quarantine or not. So that helped out their experience there in making sure they knew as quickly as possible whether they could continue to treat or if they had to quarantine. So that's more of a specific example, but that resulted in saving HR hours of work per day, and clinicians got immediate responses, which was really helpful.
Yeah, it's a great story. Power Automate, something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. Any chance to improve a business process that's kind of weighing down a certain area of the org. That's kind of where I was rooted in many years ago. So Becca, same question to you from maybe the Cognex side, a little bit of a different industry, but how did you guys measure kind of the ROI of any technological improvements due to this time?
Yeah, so we actually used LiveTiles Intelligence quite a bit. I think we installed that around September, I would say. So we had a COVID portal on the homepage. That same thing with Bradley. We would update that with, current restrictions and how the office was handling it. And so we were able to see how often people were clicking on that tile, which was really helpful. That was something that was new to us right on the homepage. So we found that to be really useful. And then we also use surveys a lot, anonymous surveys. We reach out to our employees to see how they're feeling, what they want different with the technology. We actually had to go from in-person, company-wide quarterly meetings to virtual, and that was something that was new for us, and we had to figure out how our employees were still going to be engaged. Sending out a video, what does that mean? So we would send out surveys after, shifts in our program like that during the new normal, and we would ask, did your technology work for you? Did the audio work? What about the visual? Did you have any connection issues? So anytime we shifted to something with the technology that was new for us, we decided to ask, what can we change to make this better for you, improve your experience moving forward?
Yeah, that's really great. So kind of bringing this all back together, right? It kind of sounds like either you were really well set up or you adapted and evolved and are kind of really set up to kind of move forward, right, into 2021 under this reimagined kind of work environment. So Becca, first question for you, or I'm sorry, last question for you, I'll let you go first, is what advice would you give to organizations that are looking to embrace their digital technology and reimagine the workplace now and going forward?
Yeah, so I would say, there's no better time than now for change. My company has, stuck to their traditions, and this has completely rocked everything about that for us. So we were able to readjust, culturally and from a business perspective, and, use that data and bring it to our leadership team and show them what we need to change in the new normal and, the digital transformation and what that looks like for Cognex moving forward. And they've been extremely receptive to that. So, connecting with the employees has been a huge help for us. Obviously, we want to make sure they're feeling supported, but I think it all starts with the employees.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that, Becca. And from LiveTiles, we appreciate Cognexand allowing LiveTiles to be part of your transformation and journey. Bradley, same question for you before we wrap up.
Yeah, so the reality is that the workforce is changing even in the absence of a pandemic, right? Employees are being asked to do more with less. And so I think with that said, we need to start leveraging technology more than ever to focus on process improvement, communicating more effectively, ability to adapt in a hybrid workforce model where you're working on site or remote, and trying to bridge that gap to make sure people stay connected and culture is at the forefront of an organization. And I truly believe that technology can be a part of that shift.
Yeah, and some of those stories you told, Bradley, it's really kind of adapting to truly work from anywhere, anytime, right? And having the tools to do that work whenever you can. So again, Bradley, thank you from the LiveTiles family. We really appreciate you allowing us to be part of your transformation journey as well. So again, a big thank you to both of you.